they would not be ready to interact to 6 a.m. So I'm literally just waiting around till I get a cue. So I was typically there 4 or 5 hours every single time, but the actual sex acts were only 20 to 45 minutes.
So Diddy sat there with his burqa. You're not supposed to be looking at him, and he's giving you directions, you know, while you guys are getting physical. And could you tell that he was physically enjoying himself from this?
Well, you know, as I testified to, the majority of the time he's masturbating, right? He's masturbating, he's pacing back and forth, so he's pleasuring himself while watching. So that's my only cue to him enjoying himself, right? Whatever the sexual scene and stuff we were creating, he's giving directions, saying what he wants to see. There was times that I testified to where we're in the middle of an act, and this was one of the rare occasions where we moved from the living room into a bedroom, and he actually took a stack of $100 bills and he slammed it on the bed. And, you know, we both kind of reacted startled, and she turned to him and asked him, was everything okay? And he was like, hey, look, I'm enjoying this, you know? So I did get cues of him enjoying it through his self-pleasuring and him directly saying it at times. So that's what I would share in terms of that.
So I shouldn't be asking this, but a few people have put it in the chat. It was brought up at the court about his well-hungness or not.
So again, I'm not supposed to look directly at him. I'm definitely was not focused in that area. The only thing I will say, which was kind of the odd scenario to me, I already said I cannot hear well, and I could hear the masturbation from across the room, like it was it's like a flat, like I could hear it, you know. So it was very odd that you could hear like sounds of whatever stroke or movement he can do it, but there was a sound to it. And I thought that was, if you think about, if you're going to ask the question of somebody being well endowed, which again, I don't know, right? But you would assume this, I know when I use that pump thing to get the hot sausage over the Frankfurter, I know the extra skin and girth or whatever could create sound, right? So
wow.
That's the only way I can answer that. I did not look. I did not want to look. You know, I was already having a problem with my own erection, so staring at another guy's beef was probably would not have been a good thing for me. So I can't confirm anything, but that's the most I can say to answer that question. I hope it was helpful.
Yeah, you're very helpful and very honest, and we appreciate that. I'm trying to, one side of my mind is not trying to think about this, and the other side of my mind is like, you got to ask a question, you got to think about this. But to be creating that much thunder, he must have been really banging his bishop from that distance. So, all right, so you've got a question here then. While using the baby oil, did you ever feel different? Like maybe it had other mind-altering ingredients in it?
I did not. You know, I felt like I was in my stable mind the entire time. I'm not a drinker. I don't smoke or use any drugs or anything like that. So I was pretty much squared. The only thing I would say, and I don't want to imply anything, right, at all, but I usually have a pretty good memory, right? And I do realize that the majority of my encounters, I can't remember a lot of the details. Like I can't, like, you know, I don't want this to spin into any accusation thing. If somebody asking me the question, it just made me think a little bit more to it. But I know I don't have a lot of recollection, but my honest feel is that I was fine. There was nothing to influence me in it. And if there was something in the baby oil, I'm a stripper. I've been using baby oil all my life. So I don't think there was anything impactful. But that's a good, interesting question.
You had a lot of questions come in about Diddy's, whether he was, you think he was a voyeur, or whether you think that he wanted to join in with you. questions along those lines? Any vibes? Did you detect any vibes?
So ironically, when we first began, and I did not know who he was, it was purely a voyeur type of scenario, right? Halfway through, when I actually found out who he was, I did honestly get paranoid, because growing up here in the States, there has always been rumors about Diddy's sexuality. Obviously, nobody can confirm it. You know, I don't read into it too much, because even myself as a male dancer, when I hit my height of popularity, rumors came out that, questioning my sexuality. So I know it's something that comes along. But because the rumors were out there, I was actually paranoid. You know, I write about it in my book, the insert that they're publicizing that I testified to. I say that my actual experience was, because I couldn't hear, he would give instructions, and his instructions may say something like, baby, I love that position you're in, right? But my paranoid mind with my hard hearing would hear him say, I can't wait to penetrate him. And I'd be like, oh my God, you know what I'm saying? So I was having all of these crazy, deaf, paranoid interpretations. Wondering, hey, is this guy, like I literally write it, like, it's so bad, because I wrote the story extremely comical in my book. And I'm like, oh man, this guy, I said no names, this guy's gonna see this, you know, but I'm like joking around, like, because like, and so I did. I went through a factor, like, every single time I came, wondering, like, oh man, like, if his sexuality is in question, will he, you know, make an advance at me? And if he makes an advance at me, oh shit, like, how am I going to handle this? You know, like I was definitely paranoid and worried that it could go somewhere left. But luckily it didn't. It didn't. So this is no verifying any part of Diddy's sexuality. We had no interactions, no nothing. Not one thing seemed gay or off. But because of the rumors, I was paranoid that it could go left.
So several of the viewers have asked if you could just go back and let them know how you found out it was Diddy, and what year was that?
So this started sometime in 2012, and I believe I did not find out to 2013. It was at least a year, 15 months into me having these interactions with them. And I found out by luck. Like I told you, I would wait around for hours. And one specific hotel, they put me in an additional room. And while I'm waiting, I just decided to cut on the TV, and the hotel had a welcome message. And the welcome message was, the Essex House would like to welcome Mr. Sean Combs. And I was like, what? You know what I'm saying? Like, no way. I felt like an idiot, right? Because I actually followed him on Instagram. I knew I'm a fan, right? And so, you know, I didn't obviously diligently look at his page, but the minute I saw his name, I was able to go. I'm his silhouette, like his complexion, you know, all of the things is adding up. And obviously now I see him in pictures with Cassie. So I'm like, dude, you're a dunce. A year later, you're just realizing who it is. But that's when the paranoid, that's when the paranoid kicked in. Because there was those questions of his sexuality.
So when you met them, after now realizing who they are, how did you not manage to give them a heads up that you knew? Did you have to like restrain? Was it like acting?
I played it cool, similar way, poker face. But I think very shortly after that, I think he kind of knew. I mean, I did leave the TV on. He might have went into the room, or somebody might have went in the room and saw, oh, wow, my name's on the TV. So eventually the next time he just did not have the veil on anymore, and he just had a baseball cap. So at some point I could actually see him peripheral. This entire time, I never had eye contact with him, which was odd. You know, I was asked on the Piers Morgan interview, he pointed out that literally the first time I had eye contact with him was after I testified leaving the courtroom. So that was kind of like, whoa. But yeah, I just acted normal, you know, back to your question, and kind of just went with the flow.
So when he switched from the burqa to the baseball cap, did his demeanor change, or did the scenarios change?
No, the scenarios stayed extremely consistent. Always, it was really a routine, methodical thing that happened every single time, as far as I'm concerned. It was always baby oil leading to massages, to individual masturbation, to sexual touching, escalating to either oral and then penetrative sex. It was literally the same routine every time.
You're getting asked if the encounters were videoed?
So honestly, I don't know. I'd never seen a video or a camera or anything. I have heard secondhand that they do, that there was a habitual behavior to record these things. But I didn't, if I was recorded, it was done without me knowing.
So, we've heard the grueling testimony from Cassie as to what she went through and the injuries and health problems she sustained. So a lot of the viewers are wondering, whether there were any signs, or was Diddy loving towards Cassie? Was he brutal towards her? Things like that.
Yeah, so I didn't see a lot of their interactions. I even testified to this. When they would interact, there was like a cue during the sexual sessions. This was also kind of played into my maintaining an erection and stuff, where we could be interacting, and right in the middle, he would just stand up and walk out of the room. And she would see this and get the cue, and then kind of like, we have to stop. And she would go out and she would follow him. And then they could be out 90 seconds to 15 minutes, and then she'll just come back in the room and say, hey, let's pick up where we started. And now I'm supposed to just reboot, and we'll pick up where we started. And then at some point he would casually come back into the room while we're in the mode. So there was a specific interaction between them, was always in a different room, out of my presence. And so I did not see any violence, any aggression. I didn't hear anything happen from the other room. It was just something I wasn't privy to.
Why do you think they left the room? Do you think they were partaking in substances and didn't want you to see that?
I can't really speculate. I thought, I always just assumed they left the room for some sort of instruction. And now in hindsight, I do understand that. I did see somewhere where Cassie said when she was done with an escort or a guy she was dealing with, they would have their own sexual play together. So I just assumed whatever they were seeing, hey, come here, I want to kiss you, I want to touch you, I want to whatever. And I assumed they were having some sort of intimate bond based on him maybe turned on from what he saw. So that was my speculation. I have no proof, but that's how I kind of viewed it. That was there some time for them to interact.
So Vanessa wants to know, in your scenario with Cassie, whether kissing was allowed?
In my case, there was no kissing.
And Tracy wants to know, did you ever start getting feelings for Cassie?
I did not ever start to develop romantic feelings, but I did have my own feelings of feeling special, right? When I was hired, it was told to me that I've truly believed that they were a couple, and this was just a kinky type of thing that they wanted to experience. And I ended up feeling flattered, right? Because I'm thinking, I'm the only guy. This is something they're doing. One of the conversations I had with her initially after the first time was she specifically told me, hey, I'm comfortable with you. I want to call you back. This is basically interpreted as this is okay. I'm okay with this. And me being the guy chosen, I'm like, wow, man, this, especially when I found out who it was. I'm like, wow, this beautiful woman, this billionaire boyfriend, this thousands and thousands of guys. And I'm the person that they're choosing to have this fantasy. So I walked around for years, literally right up to the allegations. And this was kind of like a secret badge of honor. Like, hey, I was chosen by this beautiful woman to be her boy toy, and I naively really thought I was special. So the confusion of feelings, I never once thought, yeah, she's gonna leave her billionaire boyfriend for me. No, my ego's not that. It's not that out of control. But I did feel special that I thought I was a personal choice of hers to interact this way, and that's where the confusion of feelings might have came from in the testimony.
Did you ever confide in anyone, any of your friends, colleagues, when you found out it was Diddy?
I did. I told a handful of friends, like, man, yo, can you believe it? Like, this is what's going on. And everybody was like, no way, that's crazy. It was like I said, it was like a badge of honor. I respected their privacy. I told only a handful of people, but the people who knew was just like, wow, man, like that's just such an amazing thing. And one thing about it that I think was verifying is sometimes you tell these stories to your friends and they're like, sure, yeah, I bet. And so the few people who thought I was embellishing or exaggerating or whatever the case may be, all of this coming out in this way, it definitely was a boost to my credibility,
Of course, yes. So once you knew it was Diddy, then this is what this question is getting at. How would you have handled the situation if Diddy had made a move on you? Surely it would have been scary considering his reputation. So did you have to have a scenario in your mind where you thought, if Diddy does make a move on me, how I'm going to react in that situation?
Of course, man. I always played it to the degree of just, stopping whatever interaction and just firmly explaining that, hey, look, that's not my sexual preference. I respect whatever it is, but these are my boundaries, and if you're comfortable with them, we can proceed. And if not, this has to stop. I never played it out as it being some sort of large confrontation or whatever. My experiences up to that point had always been respectful and actually literally spot on to don't acknowledge him. He won't acknowledge me. We won't have any conversations. So I didn't think it would be something overbearing. But I did play in my mind, how can I respectfully decline, without being offensive or being confrontational.
So these meetings then, were they always in the same location or did they vary?
They vary between about 5 different hotels in the New York City area.
And what was the largest tip you ever got from them?
So it wasn't necessarily a tip. I only mentioned pay one time, and that was due to striptease in the beginning, $200. And, the first time, like I said, I ended up with $2,000. So I never even spoke about money again. I just showed up and took whatever they gave me. And it was always either $1,200 or $2,000. I don't know why there was a difference. I don't know why the amounts varied, but it was a consistent $1,200 to $2,000 every time.
All right. So how did the meetings wind down?
You mean how did they conclude, or you mean
yes?
So yeah, I testified to this. I was always instructed to finish, I guess, orgasm, right? But the orgasms would have to happen in a very specific way. So I was instructed to orgasm on the outside of Cassie's vagina area, like around her clit, her lips, whatever. So clearly on the outside of her. And that's how the sessions would conclude every single time. Similar scenario where I told you he would just pop up and walk out of the room. Shortly after I would finish, he would get up, leave the room. She would follow him out. Whatever happened after that, I don't know. And then anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes later, she would return, pay me, and then I would be on my way.
Okay, so the last session you did with them then, did you know that? Were you put on notice or?
So the last session, I went in insecure. For this session specifically, there was a very long break between the last time I had seen them. And I noticed for certain because the last time I seen them was March of 2015. And June of 2014, I had an injury. I tore my bicep. So that injury, you're in a cast for 4 months. Then there's a rehab healing process. So So it was at least from June to March of the following year where I hadn't seen them. We're talking 9 months or so. And in that period of time, I haven't worked out, I'm healing, so I went into the scenario a little insecure myself because I know I'm not showing up as in shape, as ripped, as muscular as I used to be. So there may be a visual dissatisfaction with how I'm showing up. And then on top of that, it's been a long period of time. And I told you when those long periods of times would take, it would feel like we're starting over all over again. So we got there, similar scene. And at this specific time, Mr. Combs was more specific. He would kind of just watch and give subtle cues. But this time, he kind of walked over in the middle of us doing some sexual action, and he kind of threw some condoms on the couch and was like, "I'm ready to see you, F her." And, she's startled, I'm startled. That's pressure. And it just was not happening. I took the condoms. I'm trying to use them, trying to perform. I couldn't maintain it. That went on for some time. He walked out of the room. She left the room. She came back, instructed me to finish as usual, which I did that through some form of masturbation. They left the room again. She came back, paid me, but the conversation was different this time. The conversation was, "Hey, we just want to thank you for your privacy. We want to thank you for respecting what we do and not sharing it." And it felt like a thanks for your service, where this will be the end of it. And so I felt it. I felt it because I couldn't perform. There was a lot of pressure. I'm not as in shape, and that ended up being the last time. So that's what I recall from my final interactions with them. And again, this is not confirmed, but I have believed it was my inability to perform and the fact that I wasn't as physically fit as typically when I would show up.
Yeah, one of the things that was shocking that Cassie said was, all of the health problems she had down there. And but it sounds like when you were present, they always insisted on using condoms.
That is not correct.
Okay.
Yeah. We use condoms maybe the first couple of times, and then it went to unprotected sex. And there would be a consistent conversation between me and Ms. Ventura where she would ask, "Hey, how's your sexual health? Have you been tested? I've been tested. You're good." So we did have those conversations. And again, I was in this naive place of thinking that I'm the only guy interacting. And I definitely irresponsibly, caught up in the moment, started having unprotected sex. Actually, that was probably part of the reason why I struggled the very last time, because I'm expecting an unprotected sex scenario, as any men listening with aging and dealing with erection issues, sometimes a condom can be an obstacle, with trying to perform sexually in that type of scenario. So that added to the pressure and the anxiety when it was throwing some condoms and, "Hey, use these." So, but the majority of this time it was unprotected sex. And so getting the tidbits of all this stuff that she went through, I'm extremely grateful that her health concerns are not something she's still carrying, and that I didn't walk away from that scenario with any long-standing health issues.
So after that last meeting then, did you believe it was over, or were you still waiting for the phone to ring?
It was sporadic. I can't say I definitively said that was it. I didn't walk out of there confident, but you never know. I could have got a call back, but obviously it never came.
So was that disappointing then? Because were they your biggest clients?
Oh, by far. And yeah, it was disappointing because, like I said, I felt special. I felt until the allegations, until all this stuff came out, I really thought, hey, look, I was this special guy, this special opportunity. Even in my book, where I write about, obviously I didn't name them in the book or whatever, but when I conclude the story, I talk about it because it was written obviously before this stuff happened. I actually framed the story as I missed out on an opportunity. I missed out on an opportunity because I didn't understand that I had this psychological anxiety that affects your ED. And maybe if I knew this, I would have performed better and I wouldn't have lost this opportunity. So I really had saw it as like a unique kind of like pinnacle thing. It was like a pinnacle to my life that I had this opportunity. So it's kind of like really mind blowing to know that it was under a completely different set of circumstances, allegedly a woman being abused and taken advantage of, which just it's kind of heartbreaking if those allegations are correct, that I contributed to that, even unknowingly. So it's not a great feeling. But, you know, it was just something I had no awareness of.
A few people are asking us to whether you ever had any other celebrity clients of this nature, or they referred you to any other friends or anything like that.
I did not. You know, all my other dealings have pretty much been just male dancer parties and stuff like that. I've done parties where there's been prominent celebrities there, but really just the normal strip show stuff, you know, PG entertainment, nothing that would translate into, you know, anything close to this sexual interaction of this magnitude. Just striptease fun.
Okay, so what year was the last meeting? And what, you know, I'm wondering what was the gap then between all this came out in the news?
Well, like I said, the last meeting was March of 2015.
15.
So, yeah, so all this stuff, you know, this stuff probably came out in the news, late 2023, maybe? Late 2020.
When you're seeing it start to build up in the news, what are you thinking at this point?
I'm just like, wow, right? Like, so my first thought process is whatever her accusations are is stuff that might have happened after we concluded. Because I'm still in this fantasy bubble that I was the only guy. So my immediate thought is, boy, things sure took a turn for the worse when I left the situation. So I'm naively not really reading into it to the degree that it actually is. And then as more details come out, I'm just like, whoa, like I'm just blown away because I was clueless. Like for somebody to be so intertwined to what was going on, I was completely blind to what the factual situation was. I really viewed it as a consenting couple just trying to do something fun and sexy out of the ordinary. And you know, for it to be all of this is just mind blowing for me.
Yeah. So when you're seeing this escalate in the news, then did it ever occur to you that you could get snagged into some courtroom scenario and end up one of the most famous adult male dancers in the world?
Absolutely not. You know, so, you know, obviously when I describe my interaction, and as most people would hear, to me, and I don't have a legal analysis type of mind, right? But I don't see anything that contributes to these allegations. Again, I'm not an expert in this. So I remember my mind state when investigators first approached me. I felt like they were wasting their time. You know, my initial interviews with them was, hey guys, I'm sorry, I don't have anything for you. Like, you know, everything seemed consensual. The first people that contacted me was Homeland Security. So their focus is human trafficking. So I understand that it has to be a state to state thing. And I was like, hey, look, it was all in the same state. I lived in New York. I only seen them in New York. And so I assumed that my testimony was going to be insignificant. So it was really like, what is going on when I ended up being called to testify? I just did not think. I was in denial up into as early as a couple of weeks before I actually went on the stand.
Do they give you the option to testify, or do they compel you to testify?
They're definitely not an option. I didn't require for them to subpoena me. Because again, I'm in this naive kind of denial that they're never going to choose me anyway. So I'm just trying to be cooperative as possible. There's a lot of fear associated with what they call the Southern District of New York, right? I never got any pressure or fear from them directly, but when I would talk to my friends that are attorneys, I have a close friend that's a retired FBI agent. It's always, you don't want to mess with the Southern District. You don't want to be on their bad side. You don't want to whatever. Just do whatever they say. Just cooperate to the best of their ability. So I'm like, okay, I don't want to piss these people off. But, hiddenly I'm saying, well, they're not going to use me anyway. So I didn't put any resistance, answered whatever questions. You want me to stop in for an interview? No problem. I'm going to tell the truth and just give you what I can recall to the best of my ability. So I'm still like baffled to how I really ended up there testifying. I hope that some legal analysis really breaks down what the significance of my testimony was that actually contributed, because I'm really not clear.
How many hours were you on the stand for? And what was it like arriving at the court that day?
So arriving at the court, so ironically for me, I went 2 days. So I ended up testifying on Tuesday, but they brought me there Monday. And I had to wait because they don't know if the people testifying before you are going to be quick, if they're going to, course exam is going to be skipped and stuff like that. So it's terrible, man. Like you feel like it felt like I was some sort of like I was testifying for the mafia. like they were going to put me in witness protection after. They send 2 agents, they grab you, they put you in a car, they rush you in, like there's cameras out there, whatever, trying to film you. They rush you in, they put you in a room, they don't want you to interact, they don't want anybody to see you. And it just feels like, wow, man, it just feels like the weight of the world is on you. So and now they take your phone, you can't talk on the phone, you can't do anything, and they just put you in a room by yourself, no TV, no nothing. And you're just sitting there for hours. It's terrible. And then I don't even testify the first day. So then they take me back home, and it's like, you're going to do this whole thing tomorrow. So tomorrow, same thing, agents show up, put me in a room, kind of lock me in there. And then I was almost like shell shocked originally coming in the courtroom to testify, because the procedure is they take you to one floor, they hold you there. And then right before you testify, they take you and they put you in another room right before you go on the stand. So I'm thinking I'm going to go upstairs and be put in the secondary room and wait to be called. And for whatever reason, the person before me went extremely quick. So I just came upstairs, got off the elevator. They walked me straight in the courtroom and put me on the stand. And I'm like, what am I doing here? I'm a calm, composed guy. But I testified cool initially, but I was in a full-on anxiety attack. I was not ready. I was on stage, like my hands were trembling. Like there's nothing you can do to prepare yourself for this type of environment. It was overwhelming. But I lucked up that when they first put me on the stand, it was like 15 minutes before lunch. So I started my testimony, and it was very brief, and then we broke for lunch. They took me out, and I was able to compose myself over the 30 minutes and then finish my testimony.
So how intense was the atmosphere in there?
Man, listen, it's really kind of indescribable. Like I first of all, watching court on TV and stuff like that, you picture a much smaller room, but this room is huge, and it's just rows and rows of attorneys, and I could not even find Mr. Combs. While like it was just so many people, and the truth of the matter was I was trying to avoid eye contact at all costs. It was very intimidating, and because I don't know how this is going to go. And let's face it, I'm testifying for the prosecution, right? And even though I don't think my testimony is significant, like who am I, right? They have me there for a reason. And so I'm worried that, hey, look, I'm a deciding factor in so many people's lives. And it's just a terrible place to be, man. It's a terrible place to have influence on people's lives to this degree. So it was very difficult.
Yeah, I think you said on another interview, it was the first time you looked Diddy straight in the face. How did that feel?
Actually, I feel okay. I was extremely worried initially and all throughout my testimony, but what I can honestly say was from the time this started, you're almost threatened, like forcefully threatened that, look, as long as you tell the truth, you'll be fine. But if anything is false, anything, whatever, if you deviate, if you if your stuff is not consistent, we're going to prosecute you to the furthest of the law, you for perjury, this, that, and the other. So it's emphasized to just be honest. So I was able to go up there and honestly answer everything exactly the way I experienced it. After my testimony, after the cross-examination and the stuff that they cued on, walking out, I knew I just told the truth. I just told the truth, and I felt like I presented myself in a place where there was no bias. There was no pro him, pro her, anti him. It was just, this is the truth. And walking out, because I did feel like I presented myself that way, I became comfortable enough to look at him, and we had direct eye contact. I didn't know what to do, so I just nodded, and he nodded back. But there was no anger in his face or anything to that degree where, my hope is and even from, people that support Ms. Ventura and all of the other victims, I just hope I'm viewed as somebody that just came up, told the truth, and I can't really go past that, right? The truth is going to always be the truth. And that's what I just tried to do.
How did it feel to see Cassie again?
I actually didn't. I didn't. She's not in apparently he's real far along in the pregnancy, so she's not sitting in the courthouse.
Oh yeah, of course. Did Cassie ever communicate with you about any of this?
She did not. The last time I spoke to her or Mr. Combs was when that last time in 2015, where I had the interaction, and that was the last time any speaking or interaction took place between them.
So what was it like then when you're coming out of the court? You've got all this stress off your shoulders now. Did you just feel completely relieved?
I did. I was so happy it was over. It was kind of like the officers and the agents did a good job of avoiding me from the chaos, in terms of there was just cameras and they would run up and surround you. And I don't know if you saw some of the other people leaving the courtroom. They would yell out disrespectful things to try to trigger and create some sort of, clickbait reaction. And I was lucky enough to avoid that. They were really good getting me out, getting me into a car, and I avoided the chaos outside. So I was just happy it was over and was just trying to get home and get some sleep. But I still haven't gotten any sleep because it's a constant, right now I'm doing what I feel is damage control, and my damage control is, listen, I've been a male stripper. It's not the most glamorous title to have, but it's one I'm comfortable with. Being involved with this trial, I unfortunately went from a male stripper to a male escort. So now I'm known across the world as a male prostitute. And, obviously I indulged and I was propositioned, but this was something that I never did or promoted or made a scenario for me to make money. And it's just, those titles come with expectation and the idea of your mentality, or your, maybe people think you're a douche or a bad person. So I want to thank you for just this opportunity to present myself as the real person I am. And maybe people can see past the titles and say, okay, this is just a nice guy that was maybe a little bit too much of an opportunist and just got himself into a situation. And it's not a label I carry with me for the rest of my life, is the ugly stereotypes that come along with what I do for a living.
Yeah, the people in the chat, they were all on your side, man. They're just saying how down to earth and honest you are, and that just shines from you, and we salute you for that, because it's been such, the scenarios were so extreme. I think it was on Piers Morgan when he said about something being normal. And then you corrected him. I thought that was quite funny. What was that like going on Piers?
I thought it was great, man. I thought it was great. I knew there was going to be some challenging questions, or people are looking for the splash, right? The splash narrative. And Unfortunately, I don't have one. You know, I don't have one. I don't have the soundbite. My story is what it is. My involvement is what it is, right? And I'm only going to tell it like it is, and like I experienced it. So, you know, it's tricky with navigating, you know, people trying to push you into a conversation or a statement that creates some sort of splash. But I think I've been doing a good job trying not stepping on the landmines, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. You're doing phenomenal. My partner just sent me a message. She said she's bought your book. You're #1 right now in men's health in the UK on Amazon.
Oh, wow.
And
that's awesome.
When did you start work on the book?
So I started working on the book September 2022. It was literally after a very bad breakup. I went through a terrible breakup where I was betrayed by a partner, and she told me her betrayal of stepping out was motivated by my lack of sexual performance, which is something tough to hear, right? And me hearing that completely, for whatever reason, psychologically or whatever, I went months, I could not get an erection. And so I went looking for ways to try to cure it. And, you know, I found out that there was nothing physically wrong with me. It was all psychological. And then going further into looking into it, 50% of ED cases are mental. And there's men walking around just with anxiety, just with shame, just with low confidence, struggling sexually and trying to cure their mental issue with physical fixes, popping pills, getting some of these crazy procedures that's supposed to create circulation and stuff. And we're really being taken advantage of, right? You know, because, you know, ED is a place of shame, you know, and it was so bad for me that to correct my mental issue, I went as far as getting a penis implant, which is a drastic measure. And I don't regret it, but it just shows that when you're struggling in this place of sexuality and men, there's no place for us to discuss it. It's hard to talk to anybody. It's just so much shame. There's no tools or resources, and you can end up doing drastic things to fix it or just give up on it altogether. So I decided to write this book. Almost every guy I talk to, because nobody wants to talk to it out loud, but when I'm honest about it, I get all of these, you know what? I'm struggling too. You know, a lot of guys will confide in me. I ended up talking to my dad. He was struggling. He went and got an implant. He's 70 years old. Now he's happy. He's living his life, and he's not exactly necessarily a ladies' man, but it's just that struggle. That struggle is difficult for a lot of guys. So the book has a crazy title. It's called In Search of Freezer Meat. Freezer Meat is a play on an erection, right? I tell a story in the book where I'm in the Caribbean with a girl and we're messing around, and she reaches down to see what's going on with me. And literally she touches me and she says, "Oh my God, this thing is hard as freezer meat." And it was like a euphoric moment for me, you know, and I play into how, you know, that being affirmed that way, right? Just getting that confidence from a woman, confirming that for the rest of that trip with her, I went from somebody who was struggling with erections to having no problems, you know? So it's just a lot of my personal stories that lead into remedies that men can use and causes and effects to consider if there's something you're going through. And I think it's also good for women to read too, because we all know that couple that's in a sexless marriage or they stay in separate rooms and you wonder like, wow, why are these people not intimate? And quietly as kept, you automatically think there's some sort of tension, but men and women are always going to argue and not see eye to eye. That should not mean your intimacy completely shuts down. And I do believe that there's a lot of men in these scenarios that are struggling with their sexual confidence, and they just let this situation persist because I'd rather not have sex than fail at it. So I just wanted to have a bigger discussion about how it affects us mentally and emotionally and affects our marriages. And for men, it affects our confidence, how we feel about ourselves. And it's a lot of dysfunction in terms of how we view sexuality and our value as men. So the book just covers those type of things.
Good for you, man, because not many people are prepared to go there. Michelle is wondering, how does the implant work?
So it's technology is just amazing, right? Because there's, I'm currently, before the book was released, I currently have been dating and seeing whatever, and no woman has any idea. It's the way that a penis works is an erection is caused by, let's call them cylinders, right? On either side of a man's pee hole, there's these cylinders called a corpus. And that's what fills up and lengthens your penis to then have an erection. What the doctor will do is he makes a small incision, believe it or not, in your testicles, and he can access the bottom of this corpus, and he puts 2 cylinders in. So these cylinders go to length for your penis, and he connects them to a pump that goes in your testicles. So a man's testicles will feel like he has 3 testes. You usually have 2 testes in there. It feels like you have 3. Very inconspicuous. And that pump is connected to a little reservoir that is placed by your bladder. Apparently, we have some space in our bladder where you can put the reservoir, and you cannot see it. You can't anything. So in the process of about to have sex, I kind of reach down and just grab my testicles and give it a few pumps, and this will put the fluid in the cylinders, and it gives me like a natural erection. And it feels natural. You cannot see it. You cannot. No way to be accused. We're telling this, you might be accused. So if you ever touch a guy's testicles and feels like he has 3 testes in there, you know what's going on. So, but really, you do not know. And it's literally the best erection you will ever have in your life. As a man, you think back to the best erection you ever had. This is what you get every time, every single time, but with unlimited stamina, because it does not go down until you want it to go down.
Wow, you got a few people asking whether what your profession is now, and if you're available to do the helicopter still.
Well, my dancing days are kind of behind me, and also, the story I talked about, the helicopter and going on nude, that was very, very early days where dancing was not regulated, and you were kind of in these rental halls and there was no rules. Right now, it's very cleaned up. It's down to underwear. You ain't seeing no helicopters and no lifesavers, or no tennis matches. We got to clean it up. It's a PG show now.
Sharay, huge thank you, man. Like I said, everyone is just like loving you in the comments here. How honest you are, and how you've really just laid your life story out so everyone can see how you got into this situation, which we've not heard before. And we commend you for just handling everything so sensitively and respectfully. When you were talking about Cassie in particular, after all of the horrors that she's gone through, and you've been very generous with your time. You've spent an hour and 40 minutes with us presently. Wow. Is there anything? It's gone fast. So you've been fascinating, and we've interviewed a lot of people. Is there anything you would like to say in conclusion to the viewers? And all of Sharay's links are in the description box, folks, and I'm putting them in the live chat now. The book, the website, is Instagram.
So look, I just want to say thank you to everybody, anybody who's watching, especially people who, took the time to see me in a different light and have positive things to say, and even people who don't have positive things to say. I'm grateful for it all. Like, to be in this scenario and thrust into this type of popularity and limelight, it's just something you have to be grateful for. I mean, it's an unfortunate circumstance around it, but hey, listen, we're all a sum of our choices, right? And I made some choices. It landed me here. It's what I'm going to have to deal with, and I'm just glad I'm able to present myself in a way where some people see me in a positive light. I'm grateful for that, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to present myself that way. And shameless plug: in search of freezer meat. Pick up the book. I think I think it'll help couples. I think it'll help people. I think it's a fun, hilarious read. I wrote a lot of funny stories about my life, and I appreciate the support. And thank you.
And viewers, my partner Jen has bought the book already. Well, Sharay's been on the air. I don't know what she's got planned for me, but huge thank you for coming on. Much love and respect from the UK. I'm going to let you go and close the show, and you take care of yourself, my friend.
Thank you again. It was a pleasure meeting you. Pleasure talking to everybody. And thank you so much.
All right. Cheerio.
Take care.
What a phenomenal guest. That was so interesting. I'd seen all the other interviews he's done, you know, where they just jump on what happened at the trial kind of stuff. But his life story, mind-blowing. You know, growing up, you know, losing his mom, losing his nan, heartbreaking. And he's just such a positive guy, trying to make changes in the world regarding men's health, which is often overlooked. These are the things people are uncomfortable to talk about. So if you can support him, his website is down there, his book, even just give him a follow on Instagram. And we've got another person close to the Diddy case coming on tonight, who was on Piers Morgan, but we had him on before Piers earlier in the year, and that's Big Homie CC. So Big Homie CC, he's coming on tonight at 9 p.m. UK. Celebrity Bodyguard. He's going to be talking about protecting our own, the cabal, and global evil. Ron's coming on in 20 minutes with a story, Real Mothers, Heartbreaking Testimonies, Victoria Hague, Part 2. And then some of you may have seen Seth on Soft White Underbelly. He's a survivor, another heart-wrenching story. And we've got Seth. He's going to come on at 9 p.m. tomorrow night. And I'm going to be reaching out to Hashimoto and also to Lionel as well, and see if we can get some of the usual suspects lined up to talk about what's going on in the world, geopolitics, Diddy trial, etc. But I'm about to go to dinner with Andrew Gold, the Andrew Gold podcast I did that's on his channel. Last time I looked, it was at about 120,000 overnight. People really enjoying it, in which I expose the network from Diddy, Savile, the Clintons, etc. So if you've missed that one, check it out. Oh, thanks, Jen. Love Big Homie, indeed. So much love wherever you are in the world. We've got at least 4 more hours of content this evening. So